An all-new season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Mom Talk has just been blowing up.
Whitney and Jen are on Dancing with the Stars.
Taylor is a bachelorette.
Saying that out loud is crazy. Like, that is huge.
But all the cool opportunities could pull us apart.
It's causing issues in everyone's marriage.
My whole world is falling apart right now. It's chaos.
Watch the Hulu original series, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. I am going to talk today about this idea on the internet that withdrawing sex or not having sex is abusive. This is incorrect, and I will explore why as soon as I tell you to subscribe. My most recent subscriber episode was about sex at midlife. What are your expectations? What is reality? How do people think they could get around reality? The impact of hormones, the impact of age gap relationships. It's a great episode and very realistic, very direct, as you know from me, and no smoke blown up anyone's ass in that episode. Okay, and you should get that and 220 more if you subscribe, including when pets make your marriage worse. Okay, so there's this idea that not having sex with your partner is abusive. That's wrong. Sometimes, I mean, that's just wrong. What is anybody talking about? Like, how is not having sex abusive? And then sometimes people really think they have a gotcha and they're like, yeah, what about when you withdraw emotional closeness? And I'm like, what about every unhappy marriage? What about everybody married to an avoidant partner? Avoidant partners are not abusive because they don't like to talk about feelings. They're not. Depressed partners are not abusive because they don't smile when you walk in the room. Unhappy partners who do not want to be close to you are not being abusive. In fact, you might have been being abusive, which is why they don't want to be close. What about that? Actually abusive. Here's actual abusive. Yelling at them, screaming, calling them names, hitting them, hurting them, humiliating them, controlling them. There's the lists online of what's abusive behavior, and I talk about them in a lot of my posts. You know what's not on that list? Not having sex. Do you know why? Because nobody that is unhappy wants to have sex. You know what else they don't want to do? They don't want to be emotionally close. That's also not abusive. So from their perspective, they are unhappy, so they don't want to be close. Now, let's say they're not unhappy. Let's say they're like, I'm postmenopause, or I have erectile dysfunction and I don't want to treat it, which I see, by the way, a lot more than is mentioned. Guys who just don't want sex anymore. They're not attracted to the woman. They have erectile dysfunction. They don't care, and they don't want to treat it. Some of them aren't even allowed to go on Viagra because it interacts with their other medications or their health issues, and they're just done. They're not offering to go down on the woman, I'll tell you that. That's the preoccupied attachment men. An avoidant man who gets erectile dysfunction is game over for the sex life. And I've seen that happen over and over and over. He's not into it. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to work on himself. It's like a woman going through menopause who is also avoidant. So avoidant people, when they're done, and that's that. So anywho, not having sex, deciding that you don't want to have sex anymore, that's a decision. And you could decide not to have sex anymore. And then guess what? We live in a free country and the person can leave. They could divorce you, and they could cheat if they want to. It's not ethical, but, they could say that what you're doing is unethical. Basically, what they do not have to do is stay in the dungeon that you've locked them in, because that's not how life works. And while you may be very unhappy that somebody doesn't want to be emotionally close or doesn't want to have sex, it's not abusive. And saying that it's abusive is actually just factually wrong, and it just keeps you locked in a victim mentality where you're being abused. Now, who would choose to do this? People who have been abused. So if you've been abused as a child, right? Actually abused, if you have been, or neglected. Now, some people say, well, it's neglect. It's not neglect. Neglect is reportable. Neglect is when somebody who's in charge of you stops giving you food, like an adult stopping giving a child food. Now, that is neglect, and you get CPS involved, and the child gets taken from the home, because you did not, you are not the sole repository of your partner's needs. You're both adults. You're equal. You're allowed to leave a marriage. You're allowed to leave a marriage, right? And so if you're very unhappy, then you can leave a marriage. You would then be the person who left the marriage because that's the facts on the ground. They would have chosen not to have sex. You would have chosen to therefore leave that marriage. They would choose, like for so many women, the guy chooses not to be emotionally intimate. And by choosing, this is I don't even know if it's choosing. Some people feel like they just cannot be emotionally close. It's just not something they can do. People feel they cannot have sex. It's just not something they can do. Fine. So then the other person does make a choice. Their choice is that they do not want to live like that anymore, and they initiate divorce. Women initiate divorce 70% of the time, or at least they file 70% of the time. And they initiate not quite that much in terms of if you consider initiation like having the whole idea and everything, but it is still more than men. They still come up with the idea and file more than men do. Because frequently, ironically, they feel that there is no emotional intimacy and there is no closeness in the marriage and they're done with it. There's also anger. I mean, this is when the kids are younger, women more often leave because of anger, fighting, high conflict addiction, cheating, drug use, all these things, right, that make it untenable to live there with a small child. But as the kids get older, and especially with gray divorce, women are most often leaving because they do not feel emotionally close. They are kind of done banging their head against the wall. I have a podcast on this, is why when preoccupied attachment women stop pursuing in their 40s and they switch and they're like, all right, you don't want to be close. Well, that's that. And so they initiate divorce. So then if you're on the other side and you're a man and you're not having the sex that you want to have, you can initiate divorce. That's also something you can do. And so everybody has an option. Neglect and abuse are when there is a person in charge, and that person in charge is not allowing the other person, that is the ward, that is the dependent, access to resources, or they are blocking them from that or scaring them so that they are an adult, but they can go get these resources elsewhere, like financial abuse, So like you don't have access to money because your partner like took the ATM card, so you like can't get any money. Right? So in that case, you could go march over to a lawyer and a lawyer can help you. Even if you don't have money, you can get a free consultation from somebody who will say what you have to do. And then eventually you will have access to your money because that's only legal and it will get divided somehow. But you would need to get the courts involved, just like the courts have to get involved when an elder is being abused or neglected, like an old person that cannot, a vulnerable adult is somebody who cannot get out of that situation. If you're listening to my podcast and you're not having sex, you can get out of that situation. You go to work every day. You can stop by a lawyer's office on your way home. You can ask that person to go to couples counseling. Often you will tell me that they will say no. People say at individual counseling, oh, they're going to say no. Well, guess what? You ask them, you say, I'm going to leave you if we don't go to counseling. Guess who shows up in counseling? Your spouse. So you had more power than you thought. People who got abused or neglected as children, they think they have no power. And that is really very understandable, right? They didn't as a child. But it makes them see the world later on through a lens of being a victim. And so then when a partner says, I don't want to have sex with you because I don't feel close to you, or I don't want to have sex because I don't have any more drive after menopause, they call it abuse. That's not abuse any more than a man saying, I don't know what you mean by an emotional discussion and I'm tired and I'm going to sleep is abuse. That's not abuse. Somebody who cannot do a thing to feel close or does not want to do a thing to feel close, these are supposed to be examples, manifestations of feelings. Sex within marriage is supposed to be a manifestation of closeness. Emotional intimacy is a manifestation of closeness. If you do not feel closeness, then how is it abusive to do those things? It's just you're literally saying, I don't want to do this thing. Marriage is not, it's not supposed to be like a blood sport. It's not supposed to be like Hunger Games. People are supposed to be consensually deciding to be close with each other. And if somebody does not feel close, they aren't going to have the emotional conversation. They aren't going to do date night. Is it abusive not to do date night? Certainly not, obviously. It sounds absurd to say a man's being abusive if he never plans a date night. Of course he's not. He's just kind of being a dick. Or he hates her. And maybe who knows what the rest of the problem is. Maybe she screams at him all the time. Maybe she's actually being abusive, so he doesn't want to go on date night. Maybe she's calling him a piece of garbage all the time. And she's berating him, and so then he doesn't want to go on date night. You never know the whole story. What the whole story is not is that somebody is abusing another person by not having sex. That is not a story. That is a meme. That is fake news. That is not real. So you have to say, why doesn't the person want to have sex? And why would the person want to have sex in a situation where somebody would call them an abuser for not having sex? Would you want to go on date night if you knew your wife was going to call you an abuser if you didn't go on date night? If people view the world as a victim, they can always find a way to be victimized. Always, every time. You can say that your boss is victimizing you, your coworkers, your children, everybody, because you used to be victimized. Or even if you were not victimized, you saw a parent who's what I call a professional victim, saying that the world is out to get them and abusing them in various ways. And then you learn that whenever you don't get the outcome that you want, you are being victimized. And that's not true. You know, you have choices and you are telling yourself. So then men say, yeah, well, if I leave, I lose half my money. First of all, it's only half of your money. You only ever have half of the money in the joint account because there's two people. That's division, right? Divided by two. And so if you don't want to lose half of what's in your bank account and potentially have to go to a lesser home, you can't just say that this person is abusing you, you know, by not wanting sex. You're making a decision. Let's call it a decision. Decide not to have sex in order to keep what's in your bank account. You know, nowadays with split custody, you decide not to see your kids less time so that you could have sex. That would be a decision you can make. Or you could decide that until your kids are a little older, you're gonna not be worried about how much sex you have because you want to stay with your kids. So you're doing a cost-benefit analysis and you're deciding to stay. But the other person is not abusing you. And a man who does not want to be emotionally close is not abusing you. He's not neglecting you because he's not in charge of you. He is not somebody who wants to be emotionally close. That sucks. I get it. He's avoidant. She's avoidant if she doesn't want sex, you know, probably unless it is later in life, painful, etc. But these avoidant people, they're not abusing you. Preoccupied attachment people are yearning for more closeness than an avoidant partner wants to give, but that does not mean that the avoidant partner is abusive. So we want to take, for your own sake, take yourself out of that victim-perpetrator lens and think, what are my choices here? I am making choices. My choices are to stay and be upset instead of leave, or instead of force the hand with couples therapy, or instead of focusing on other things in my life that aren't date night or sex or what have you. But it is really, really toxic to stay in that victim mentality because it pervades everything. Then when your kids get older, you'll say the kids are victimizing you, or maybe you even say it now, or your friends or your family, your extended family, your in-laws or your coworkers or your boss, and you get trapped in this idea of yourself as a victim. And that does not help anything, to think that anybody who doesn't do something you want is abusing you, because that isn't true. All right. This is one of those podcasts that's kind of love it or hate it. And the people who love it really probably want to work on themselves. And that's great. And the first place to look into is, where did you learn this victim mentality? And I'll tell you that you heard the same rhetoric at home. The same, that whenever the parent got into a problem with somebody, didn't like what somebody did or said, then they painted themselves as a victim. And then you learn that, and it's not helping you now. Because guess what? In a lot of these cases, you could be having date night or you could be having sex if you didn't paint yourself as such a martyr and a victim all the time. Then the person might actually be able to come forward in whatever way they could. But what they're sick of is being painted as an abuser or a victimizer, because that isn't real and it doesn't feel authentic, and it feels like you're trying to get something for nothing and you're not owning your part. All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. And as always, please do subscribe if you want the extra episodes, including Sex at Midlife and Pets and the Marriage and Oral Sex on Women and lots of other ones. All right. Have a great day.